You are now about to witness the strength of street knowledge.
What's up, Mocha Minions? How y'all doing? It is your girl, your diva in knowledge, Lady Mocha, representing Mocha's Cafe de Paris. Definitely want to say thank y'all so much for still donating to my channel monthly. I really appreciate it. Thank y'all for being so patient with my slow dragging content self. But nevertheless, I want to get into this right away so I don't waste any more time than I've been wasting. Nevertheless, I owed you guys an Unhinged series, the story of Pastor Tracy Burleson and First Lady Paulette Burleson as well, taking y'all back to 1990. Make sure I got my years right. Taking y'all back to 2000 and it was 1995. So I had it correct. So I want to take y'all back to 1995. I believe I was 15, going on 16 at the time, and I'll be 45 next week. So put yourself back in that mind frame of 1995. Maybe you was in high school, maybe you just started college, whatever the case. That is when the story goes back to that year. So in order for us to have a deeper perception of this whole story and the tragedy that resulted behind it, I wanted to take a moment to focus on Mrs. Paulette Ross. Paulette Ross was born June 5th, 1963, and she was raised in Houston, Texas. She definitely was raised in poverty. She came up in the struggle, but like most women, she had hopes and dreams of becoming something more significant and actually having a significant purpose in life. So she came from a good family, but they had experienced many hardships of poverty, and she was very determined to build a better life for herself. So even though her family came from poverty, Paulette Ross never felt like her family was sold down to the dumps to where they felt like they did not have a purpose. But instead of them perceiving their hardships as struggles, it actually became a means of survival. And that is when they also became more affiliated as in the church of the community. And that is when Pauletta became very close to God, because she was raised in a family in which they had to go to church and serve the Lord faithfully at their local Baptist church. So after graduating college during her 20s, she took up nursing. And in the midst of taking up nursing, she was really at ease that she was fulfilling her dreams, as a nurse. But at the same time, what she really wanted more than anything was a companion, a marriage, a relationship. So she allowed her desperation to basically derail her from her nursing career, and she instantly married very quickly. The marriage consisted of abuse, which caused her to lose focus on fulfilling her career in nursing. So she basically didn't get to finish out her dreams once she let go of that dream and got married. And she basically lost all of her interest in pursuing her nursing career. So shortly thereafter, okay, after leaving an unhealthy marriage, an abusive marriage, she once again shortly married 4 years later in another abusive marriage, with whom she did gain 2 beautiful children. And later on in turn, she also had adopted foster children, because I guess after the loss of 2 unsuccessful marriages, she felt like, okay, maybe my purpose needs to be, I need to take in other children, care for other children, provide and become like a mother to other children. So I guess her caring for other children gave her a sense of purpose, especially being that she did not have, being that she just had 2 failed relationships. And I guess that gave her the extra motivation to go into becoming a foster parent. So after 2 failed relationships, Paulette's sister had encouraged her to focus more on having a relationship with God. So her sister Joyce pretty much, encouraged Paulette to focus more on having a relationship with God. And she started attending the first New Mount Calvary Baptist Church. So although finding the Lord, did give her, a sense of hope, there was still that missing link in her life. And again, Paulette still wanted a husband. She still wanted a soulmate, a male companion. So, much to her surprise, she indeed landed the attention of the church's drummer, Tracy Burleson. So, y'all, Tracy Burleson was actually playing drums for the first New Mount Calvary Baptist Church at that point in time. So, what ended up happening was he was not only the drummer of that church, but his stepfather was also the pastor of the church as well. So what ended up happening was Tracy just kept, watching her, had his eyes on her, working his way up to charm her. And eventually, he did finally get her attention to where they was able to start talking and conversating, going on dates, getting to know one another. So, although he was only 27, Paulette was willing to take a chance, although she was 12 years older than him, which would mean she was about roughly 38. Okay, so it was a 12-year difference, and that is how Tracy was able to really, stroke her ego. He was younger, very charming, so that was already a big advantage within itself, the fact that he was older and he knew how to charm his way into her. So Tracy knew how to turn up the charm. Okay, so not only was he handsome and young, he also had displayed such compassion for the word of God, and he had convinced Paulette that he was hoping to become a pastor himself someday. So, this was music to Pauletta's ears. Like, okay, this man is not only young, not only handsome, he plays the drums for the church, but he actually wants to become a pastor himself. Now, keep in mind, the reason why Pauletta was so impressed by this was because she, too, always wanted to be with the man of God, a pastor. She always had that dream of being the first lady. So a woman of God to be married to a man of God was one of Pauletta's biggest dreams come true, y'all. She just knew she finally had met her knight in shining armor. So after a year of basking into the ambience and blissful romance, Pauletta once again made the choice to rush into a third marriage, only after knowing Tracy a year. Now, you would think after 2 failed marriages, she would be more wiser, especially now that she's older, and knowing this man is young. Yet Pauletta once again was determined to be a wife by any means necessary. So Pauletta Ross married Tracy Burleson in 1995 after meeting him at First New Mount Calvary Baptist Church in Houston. So being that they married in 95, I would say they actually they actually met in 1994. So I just was 1 year off, but it was actually 1994 when they met, y'all. Just thought I would reiterate on that. So Tracy became a father figure to Tracy's 2 sons from her previous marriage, John and Andre, which again was more brownie points. Tracy had also decided to get his son William to move in with them as well. So that way Pauletta's 2 sons and his son William all could be a happy family. Okay. So it was like a little Brady Bunch type of thing, and everybody clicked, everybody got along well. Basically William got along very well with Pauletta, Tracy's son, and Pauletta's 2 sons got along very well with Tracy. So things seemed to be looking up, and they finally, it appeared to Pauletta that things were finally coming together, right? So the only thing that was a little different about William's situation compared to Pauletta's biological sons, William also was very similar to his father, as far as with his laid-back, charming personality. But the young man, he had struggled with battling sickle cell anemia, which really took a toll on his life and health at such a young age. He was repeatedly in and out of the hospital, so he never really could enjoy his childhood because he was sickly so much. But he suffered with many issues, but he was able to overcome it once he moved in with his father and his stepmother, Pauletta. So Tracy had finally accomplished his goal that he and his wife Pauletta had his dream set up on by becoming a pastor of the church. So in 2008, y'all, Tracy became an official pastor of First Mount Calvary Baptist Church, and Pauletta was there Sunday front and center to support him faithfully. Now keep in mind, even though he finally accomplished the goal of becoming this wonderful man of God, which in turn made him and Pauletta a wonderful loving couple of God, the church ended up catching on fire. Now before then, let me also address this point here. A lot of people had an issue with Tracy becoming a pastor because y'all have to realize, Tracy did not get in the normal way, the traditional way that most of the members was used to receiving their pastors. Most of the time, the members was able to vote in with the pastor they wanted. But in this instance, the members had no say-so, y'all. So it ended up backfiring in a sense, and we'll talk more about that as time goes on, but I just want to kind of bring that up too. But God must be just knew that Tracy did not have the best interest of the church, and just a lot of things started going wrong. It started derailing once Tracy Burleson became pastor. When he became pastor of the church, he started changing a lot of the rules, which was definitely not within the best interest of the church or the members, but in the best interest of himself. There have been members who stated that if people weren't paying a certain amount of tithes or they weren't tithing, that he was telling them that they would have to leave the church. He was just doing a lot of funky stuff. Down to he became a tyrant. The choir couldn't even pick and choose the songs they wanted to play, not even the choir director. He told them what to sing, how to sing it. He just became overly dominant. I mean, you already got your work cut out for you as a pastor. So why are you trying to regulate every single aspect of the church? You already got a choir director that's regulating your choir. You already got your ushers or the committee. They're regulating the finances. No, you just completely took over all of that. And then they were finally blessed with an abundant amount of money that was given to the church, and he even announced it that they were blessed, and that that church was recently blessed at that time with a large amount of revenue. I can't remember exactly where the money came from. I can't remember if it was some type of grant or some type of um, um, federal grant. I'm not sure what it was, but the church was blessed with a substantial amount of money. So the church got excited, thinking that okay, that money is going to go towards things within the church that are needed. That's going to help to build the church. That's going to help to be able to create more programs. And no one heard anything else about the money, and nobody saw where the money went. So it was a lot of red flags coming from Tracy Burleson once he became pastor. And ironically, the crazy thing was the church had been caught on fire, and the church was actually, in the process of being rebuilt around the time, when the fire started. So before the new church could be completed, tragedy struck. Also, as you thought it couldn't get any worse, it was bad enough the church had burned down. Now, before I bring this part up, when the church had burned down, 𝓜𝓸𝓬𝓱𝓪'𝓼 and Tracy still call themselves trying to, still stand strong as the pastor and the first lady of the church by keeping the church going. So they will have church outside of the burnt church, meaning they will literally put chairs outside, I guess a tent, and the podium. So I guess even though the church was burnt down, they still was depending on those tithes. They still was depending on members to support the church. So that was their way of showing that yes, this bad incident happened. Yes, we lost the church, but that does not mean we have to totally give up serving God, coming together and fellowshipping for the Lord. So they continued to keep the ministry going, even though the church had been burnt down to the ground, to the crisp. Just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, y'all, tragedy struck once again when Paulette was shot in the back, unalived, in the back of her head while sitting in the driveway in her lawn chair. So, as many of you could imagine, hearing the First Lady unalived in this matter, it definitely was a shock to the community, and it was a shock to the members, and it was really a shock to Tracy Burleson, who definitely put up this persona like, he couldn't understand who would want to hurt his wife. She was unalived on May 18th, 2010 is when she had deceased. Tracy had left, supposedly, he stated, during that tragic incident, that he was not there because he went to the store. And he didn't know that any sort of thing happened until he came back from the store and he found her laying, deceased in the driveway in a pool full of blood. He frantically called 911 at that time. So of course he's on the phone panicking and somebody took my wife's life. I don't know what happened. I came back from the store and I see my wife laying there in the driveway. Who could do such an awful thing? I'm a man of God. This ain't right. Who would take my wife from me? Who would ruin my life like this? So he's saying all of this during his 911 call. So, the homicide detectives, they show up on the scene. And, Tracy is acting very distraught, as he explains to the detectives that he found his wife, laying in her own pool of blood. So, he's really turning up the antics, And when the detectives asked who he thought could have possibly been behind the shooting, Tracy said a lot of people in the church had animosity towards him and his wife. So it was a huge possibility it was a church member, and he also feared for his wife as well. Because remember, a lot of people was reluctant against Tracy Burleson becoming a pastor in the church. But keep in mind, Tracy got out of the tradition because his stepfather was a pastor of the church. So he basically changed all the rules to accommodate Tracy to become pastor. The stepfather told the church, hey, my stepson is now going to be our pastor. Nobody was able to vote right. So a lot of people said they was not surprised that a lot of things went left, because the way Tracy was chosen to take over in ministry, it was already wrong to begin with. So 9 times out of 10, when you start off something wrong, it ends up wrong, right? So while Tracy's talking to the detectives, all distraught and heartbroken, his son William shows up on the scene. And, the detectives question him as well. And he also, co-signs with his father's story and basically says he also believes it was a church member as well. And that, and other people didn't take it too kindly that Tracy Burleson was now the pastor that was going to be leading the church. And the church members did not get the respect of being able to vote them in like they've always done for years, right? So after further questioning, William stated that he wasn't living in the home with his father or Pauletta for quite some time. Now keep in mind, again, William was a sickly child. He had sickle anemia. And he no longer wanted to live with his father and Pauletta because he basically said Pauletta was really mean and nasty to him. Okay? He stated that Pauletta never really treated him like she treated her biological children. That when he would do something bad or, she was having like issues with him, she would abuse him by making him get on his knees in a pile of rice, abusing him, just doing a lot of malicious things toward him. And, of course, because that was his father's wife, he just no longer wanted to live under the same roof with his father, knowing how his father's wife, Pauletta, was treating him like a unwanted stray pet. Like, I don't want you here, So he got the notion, and William went to sharing a lot of his abuse, with Tyann, who was also a caregiver at the time. And Tyann empathized with him, and she went ahead and took him in and became like a second mom to him. Like, okay, I'll be more than welcome to help you out. I don't want you having to stay somewhere where you were being abused and mistreated. So that was the reason why William had moved down the street from Paulette, and his father, because he just couldn't stand under their roof, with the way Pauletta was treating him. So anyway, as detectives began to interview many others that was also familiar with Tracy and Paulette, the members, neighbors, people of the community, they started finding out that the narratives for Paulette's death was way more different than what Tracy and William was saying. Okay? Again, Tracy and William made it seem like nobody just didn't like them. They didn't really want him there. That was the narrative they tried to push. But after the detectives went talking to many other people collectively, the members of the church, the community, people who live within the community, neighbors, their spin on it was that Tracy Burleson was indeed a problem from the start. So now this is starting to make the detectives look like, okay, something else is not adding up. Because everybody's story about Tracy Burleson was pretty much the same. Many of the church and community answers collectively implied that the church was never the same when Tracy became a pastor. As I stated before, the church had always traditionally voted on the pastor, but because Tracy's stepfather was a deacon, he overruled the votes and appointed Tracy as a pastor, whether the church agreed or not. So this upset members because that was the one time they did not have any say in the matter. And Tracy was not voted in, but he was basically handed the position of a pastor, and there was nothing anyone could say or do about it. His stepfather, which was the pastor, pulled strings and granted him the position. However, many of the members did not feel that Tracy was qualified to become a pastor. There was a lot of arguing and bickering during meetings, and conferences with the church, because no one was pleased with Tracy becoming a pastor without getting voted in as they had always done. So, this caused a lot of drama, within the church. Even Paulette was not going to allow anyone in the church for going against her husband's position as a pastor. That was her dream, and no one was going to ruin it. Keep in mind also, A lot of these individuals didn't have a lot of nice, kind things to say about Pauletta either. They said she too was just as arrogant and bigoted and snooty as Tracy Burleson. Now, a lot of things, in result to this, even Pauletta herself seen Tracy being foul. Tracy had relations with some of the church members. If not, they was non-members. She even came into church one day and caught Tracy having sex with a disabled female in their office. Tracy Burleson became a straight devil. He was a straight devil. And even Pauletta saw with her own eyes how corrupt and no good her husband was. And that last straw, when she actually came in and God put a bolt in her face for her to see that he was having sex with this disabled female who was fully being taken advantage of, she pretty much overlooked it. She got mad with him at first. Of course, she went off, and she, out of anger, she told other people within the church what he did, because she was so angry with him that she intentionally wanted to expose him or blast him out of hurt and pain. But even after all of that, she still decided to stay and got upset with everybody else who wanted Tracy Burleson gone. But even you did, she was the one who called him and told everybody. So now everybody see you go against your word and you saying, no, that's my husband, I'm going to stand by him. No matter what, now it's making people look at her like she's a villain just as much as Tracy Burleson is, right? So this story is really crazy, y'all. Furthermore, a lot of the church members believe that Tracy and his wife Pauletta was the ones that was actually in on the church getting burned down, because they felt like it was done on purpose in order to collect some insurance money. There was also rumors, like I stated before, that Tracy had been sleeping around with many women. Not only women, I heard that he had also been sleeping with men. So this man is definitely demonically, sexually perverse. He will sleep with men, women, disabled, females, anything that he feel he could take advantage of, he would do it. Okay? So Tracy Burleson was not a devoted husband at all. So at first, a lot of people speculated that his multiple affairs could have contributed to Pauletta's death, but that has yet to be confirmed. At this time, at that time, they really confirmed it. They really could not confirm it then, right? So Tracy and Pauletta had been, within 15 years of the marriage after, her death. So Pauletta's sister claims that they've been having problems, especially within the 2 years of their marriage, is when things like really got ugly. It was stated that Tracy had sick sexual fetishes that involved a little bit of everything: men, women, trans, missions, etc. Who the man was a devil. Anyway, Pauletta was distraught after she saw too many red flags, but for the sake of her marriage, and you got to remember she had failed with 2 other marriages, she decided to be in denial and overlook it. Yeah, I know it's messed up, but I'm gonna stand by my man, and I want to be the first lady in his position. So no, I'm not going anywhere. So another statement has circulated during the investigation that Pauletta had been arguing in her driveway with Tracy and another woman from a neighbor. No one knew the nature of the argument, but later during the investigation, they interviewed another woman by the name of Tyon Palmer, who was, like I said earlier, the caretaker of William, which is Tracy Burleson's son. So she implied that she became like a second mother to William, and that he was with her during the night Pauletta was shot. So at the time, William was ruled out as a possible suspect. A reliable source, on the other hand, which was a friend of William Fuller, called the detectives and stated that she had evidence that William was involved in the murder because he confessed to it. The deputy set up a wiretap with the friend, and that's when it was proven over the phone that William, Tracy Burleson's son, Pauletta's stepson, had indeed confessed that he had unalived Paulette. But what really added the insult to injury, he said he only did it because his father, Tracy Burleson, told him to do it, demanded him to do it, because you have to realize Tracy Burleson is a narcissist, and he's a devil. He's used to having his way, and he's used to getting over on people. And especially when you have a parent that's very manipulative and conniving like that, it's very hard to say no. So William basically stated that his father was very demanding and threatened him to do it, you know. So it started in 2009 when William brought his caregiver. It got worse actually when he brought his caregiver Tyon to the church for Family Day. He introduced Tyon, his caregiver, to his father Tracy. Tracy sends her a note telling her that he was interested in her and he wanted to get to know her better. Now, mind you, this is the son's caregiver. Now Tracy is flirting with this woman and gesturing this woman, right? So she knew he was married, but had no idea he was divorcing his wife, because that was the lie Tracy told her. Most married men will sit down and lie and say they plan on getting divorced, or they are divorced. But anyway, Tracy and Tyon started dating. He asked for Tyon's hand in marriage. Shortly thereafter, which she accepted, but there would be hell to pay, and Tracy knew it. Paulette had 2 failed marriages, and she had put too much work into becoming a first lady, so she wasn't going to give in to divorce. I mean, Tracy knew that Paulette wasn't going to give in that easily. Paulette believed that divorce was a sin. So Tracy felt the only way he could end things was by unaliving Paulette, by ending her life. Tracy convinced his son that if they were to unalive Paulette, Tracy would have the benefit of being remarried, and both of them would be able to receive the insurance money if William had agreed to go through with the mission. So this is your father telling you, your father who's abusive, who you fear, is telling you, you better do this, but if you do it, I'm going to make sure when she passes away and I collect the insurance money that I'm going to make sure that you benefited from it as well. So Tracy had a big influence over manipulating his son, who respected his authority, and I gave him a big advantage. So William, he didn't want to unalive Paulette, but his father was very abusive, manipulative, and controlling. Not only that, you got to realize William he wasn't too fond of Paulette. He wasn't too fond of her as it was, so that gave him that extra incentive that, yeah, I should do like my father and take her out, because I don't even like her. I don't even like how she treat me anyway. And after the confession, before that, the detectives had convinced a friend to have a wiretap on, so they can actually get the confession from William. So William ended up confessing, and he was indeed arrested. Tracy's son was arrested for unaliving Paulette Burleson, his stepmama. After the confession was made, he was arrested May 18, 2010. William exclaims after arrest that Tyon had drove him to the house to carry out of the father's orders. So at this point, William is telling them pretty much everything. How it went down, what caused him to go unalive her. He's spilling it all, right, to the detectives. So he further states, which the detectives did not know, Tyon, which was his caretaker, and the woman who was now involved with his father, had drove him to the house to carry out his father's orders. The gun had belonged to Tyon, and as he approached the scene, he saw his father arguing with Paulette, and that's when he unalived her in the back of her head. After William had completed the mission, Tyon was persuaded by Tracy. Check this out now. I want y'all already follow this, because it's very sick, and I know y'all may not be able to comprehend it. But after After William, Tracy's son, had completed the mission of unaliving 𝓜𝓸𝓬𝓱𝓪'𝓼, Tyrone was persuaded by Tracy, William's father, to have sex with his son as a way of rewarding him for the devil's work, and the father would also marry Tyrone afterwards. So, to make this very simple, Tyrone, William's caregiver, they had already bonded. He pretty much always perceived Tyrone as a second mother. When he brought Tyrone to that church, that is when, as on Family Day, that is when Tyrone and his father, Tracy Burleson, met. Now, keep in mind, Tracy was still married at the time, right? So, they were supposed to be getting together. Tracy and Tyrone had already made these plans to get together and marry. So, why would you convince the woman you wanted to marry and be with to take your son to bed as a reward for unaliving Tracy's wife? So, y'all could be together. So, y'all mean you don't mind sleeping with the same female that your son, that you gave her permission to smash your son? And my thing as a woman, who would want to feel comfortable with smashing a father and a son? Well, Lori Harvey did it, but that's another story. But that's what happened. That's how sick and twisted the situation is. And Tyrone was very easy to influence and manipulate in this, because she too, like 𝓜𝓸𝓬𝓱𝓪'𝓼, really wanted a soulmate, a companion, and Tracy played on that, you know. And it's sad that he used the woman he claimed he loved and respect to sleep with his son. It's crazy, right? Stuff out here really exists, y'all. Investigators have received an ample amount of probable cause to proceed with the arrest and file the charges against all three who were involved. Police had actually found Tracy in bed with Tyrone during his conviction, during the arrest. Okay, so when they actually went to go pick up Tracy, he was caught in bed with Tyrone. Okay, the same woman who he persuaded to go to bed with his son after his son unalived his wife. After hearing all sides of the story from Tracy, William, and Tyrone, and weeks of the trial, all were convicted with capital murder. So all three were convicted. For those who are not aware, capital murder is life in jail with no possibility of parole or death execution. Meaning, either way, you are screwed. You are 100% screwed. You're never going to see daylight unless you see it through the window of a jail cell. William further stated that 𝓜𝓸𝓬𝓱𝓪'𝓼 had verbally and mentally abused him as a child, and she never treated him as her own, which played a major part in him wanting to take her life. He confessed to this in court during the trial. So at this point, I guess I wasn't sure if he was trying to save face for his father by saying it's not just his father who persuaded him to do this, but he was already getting mistreated, so he was going to do it regardless. I don't know if that was the incentive he was trying to do, but it did not work. So anyway, in 2011, a verdict was reached. Tracy Burleson was charged with capital murder and received life. So even though he did not actually pull the trigger, he was not the trigger man, he was the mastermind behind it. He influenced his son and Tyrone. He influenced and coerced both of them into doing this. William Fuller, his son, was charged on the other hand with murder, but only given 20 years. He's out now. And Tyrone Palmer, which the family was very upset about, she had only got 7 years due to her cooperation. They really wanted her to be nailed to the cross too. But, you know, we know when it comes to the justice system, you're not going to always get the justice that you deserve. So yes, this was a very, very tragic situation. But this is what happens, ladies, when you don't love yourselves. This was Paulette's third marriage. And she was just so determined on having this family, having this dream of being this first lady, this wife. She had her heart set on that. And she had her heart set on being a wife, period. And this is the reason why she rushed into another marriage for the third time after only knowing Tracy for a year. had she took the time to really get to know him, she would have saw this man had a lot of demonic skeletons in the closet. But this is what happens when women, we rush into things. You don't get to take the time to see a person for who he really is. You could be dealing with a wolf in sheep's clothing. And this was the very man who ultimately took her life. The man who she loved, the man who she supported as a pastor all of these years. She encouraged this man. She supported him. She had his back, even when she caught him in the act, even though he disrespected her. And this is the thing. When you stand by these men, even when they do some foul things towards you, it gives them to room to not only do others in, but to do you in as well. So this was a very sad story, y'all. Definitely the community also had a major loss because they lost the church. The church was one of the blessed things about that community. It was already a small community, and the church was one of the few positive things they had going. And to know that all of that was stripped from them because of a corrupt man who was not a pastor, who was not a man of God. He was given the privilege to become a pastor. And this is what happens when you don't make people work for stuff. You let them start off already having the advantages of something that it took other people years to get. They end up bringing reproach to your ministry. He was the devil himself. He had assigned the devil, the stepfather, to being in leadership over that church. And Tracy Burleson had nothing but bad intentions from the beginning. He wanted to be in leadership so he could continue to keep using his demons to his advantage. You're going around here fornicating and committing adultery with all of these individuals and all of these sexually demonic perverse demons that you never conquered, to where you just will have it with anyone or anybody, man, woman, disabled person. It don't matter. It's very sad, but this is what happens when you stand by these men and you support them in their shenanigans. And not only that, from what we heard, rest in peace, bless her soul, but they said Pauletta was something nasty, that no one could tell her anything about Tracy. That was her man. She was standing by him, and she didn't care how the church members felt. She didn't even care for herself, because she came in and caught him red-handed with a disabled woman having sex with her in the office, and she stayed. And a lot of times when you stay through that type of level of disrespect, it only escalates and it continues to get worse. But anyway, y'all, this was my unhinged story of Pastor Tracy Burleson, who was never a pastor, First Lady, Paulette. Sometimes they was calling her Paulette and then Pauletta, so I just use both. But and First Lady Pauletta Burleson, her family to this day is still struggling from her loss. Her sons are grown now, but it's very sad that it took family that lost a sister, who lost a mother, and it was basically because he wanted out of a relationship, of a marriage he never wanted to begin with. Sounds like to me Tracy Burleson saw and spotted that Pauletta was very vulnerable and she really wanted a relationship. These men could smell desperation on you. That's why I tell women it's not good for men to be able to smell desperation on you. He knew he didn't have to pull a lot of magic tricks out of his sleeves to win Pauletta over. Matter of fact, she married him within a year. So it just sounds like to me Pauletta had a lot of self-esteem issues herself. And unfortunately, it cost her life, and it's a very unfortunate situation. She don't know how God could have blessed her if she said, you know what, if you want this divorce, let's just go ahead and do it. Don't be fighting to stay with a man and use religion as an excuse for why y'all married to stay together. Well, the Lord doesn't honor divorce, but yes, at the same time, the Lord does not honor people staying in a marriage that's unholy, that's toxic, unhealthy. So you got to be careful as far as thinking because you and a person are married, y'all supposed to stay married no matter what. He wanted out of that marriage. So it took him, so he felt, to take it to that extreme, to eliminate her, because he knew Pauletta was very dominant. She was not going to sit up there and just take it and say, oh, okay, that's fine, you go be with this woman. Hell no, I'm not going nowhere. She going, but I'm not going. He didn't want to deal with that. He wasn't man enough to deal with Pauletta not giving in to what he wanted. So he ultimately made the decision to unalive her. And the sad part was he used his own son to do it. He knew his son went through years of sickle cell anemia and all of that. So I pray this young man, gets to have a good life after this. Somehow God has mercy and grace on him. But it's just a totally sad situation. But this is a true story, and it happens every day, more than we realize. So, lady, let me know what you think about this Unhinged episode. Also, what is your intake on this story? Do you really believe that Tracy Burleson was a devil in disguise from day one? Do you believe that Pauletta caused her own death because she saw a lot of red flags? She kept overlooking it because she wanted so badly to be with him. She wanted so badly to be with him. Let me know what y'all think about this. I'm interested in getting your perspective. So anyway, y'all be blessed. Hit that like button, y'all. Let me know that y'all like today's topic. Again, I appreciate y'all patience, ladies. Thank you so much, Mocha Minions. Thank y'all for the $3 every month. Thank y'all. Love y'all all the way through. Y'all be blessed. Take care.